introduce Pam Harley. Pam is Vice President of Operations for Silverchair Semantic Division, where she works to develop and maintain a set of semantic technologies and services involved in taxonomy, management, and application of semantic tagging to STM content. Pam is passionate about releasing information from constraining wrappers and loves working to develop strategies for creating content that can be repurposed and is interoperable and findable. Before joining Silverchair, Pam was charged with e-publishing strategy and product development at American Psychiatric Publishing, Inc., where she was also a managing editor and production editor for the Post Department. She started her publishing career with the Journals of the American Diabetes Association. Pam is a graduate of Duke University with a Bachelor of Science degree in Biology and Psychology.
Thanks, everybody. I want to start with a disclaimer. I am not a semantic technologist. I'm not a taxonomist. I'm not an ontologist. I hope that everybody had the opportunity to flip through the really excellent book on semantic web technologies that circulated earlier, that Pascal, who spoke earlier, is the author of. I will not be talking about things like that. That is way out of my purview. What I do bring is 20 years of experience. 20 years of experience in STM publishing. I have worked in editorial, production, and product development environments, and for the last 2 years I've worked with Silverchair, their Semantic division. Silverchair has spent about 10 years working with semantic tagging and using that tagging to build applications and products for STM publishers. So at Silverchair we learn a lot about tagging and a lot about using tagging to inform products. So here's the plan for today. We're going to talk about what is semantic enrichment, why you should care about it, and how to get started. I will be honest, this is a lot to bite off for a 30-minute talk, so I'm going to move quickly. And I have tried to make my slides be as sort of self-explanatory as possible, so you can take them later and take a look at them offline, and also feel free to grab me at breaks or after, or just give me a call. First, don't do what I'm about to do. Don't start by exploring technology. Don't go back to your staffs and say, go out and buy me some of this semantic technology, this magical semantic technology. You really want to start with what your users really need. And a great way of getting at this is user stories. So I'm going to take a little side trip to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page with user stories. User stories capture what the user wants to achieve. So what you're trying to get at here is who wants the functionality and why it allows that user to achieve something useful. When you're creating user stories, and some people might refer to these as use cases, or hear use cases spoken a lot. There are distinctions between these terms in product development, in software development, but for our purposes, they really kind of mean the same thing. What we're talking about is getting at how people want to use your content, and what tasks are they trying to do when they use your product? What answers are they looking for? At what point in their workflow is your product used? Almost all information sites are going to have multiple user stories, so even if you have a site that is for cardiologists or that has cardiology content, you're going to have all sorts of different types of users. So you're going to have clinicians who treat patients, you're going to have researchers who are looking for everything there is to know on a particular intervention. You're going to have students who want to pass an exam. These are all going to be potential use cases for your product, and these users are going to make specific demands on your product. So you want to be aware of what they need from you. Never forget that your organization is also a key user of your product. There's certain information that you want to get about your users and about their use of your product, so keep that in mind. So I'm going to hop back over to what is semantic enrichment. You see all of these different terms: tagging, markup, indexing, fingerprinting, classification, categorization. These all, in some settings, and depending on who's talking, mean the same thing. There definitely are distinctions here, but again, for what we're talking about today, you'll note that they're used interchangeably to the point where the distinction doesn't really matter for this setting. When you're talking to vendors about these kinds of technologies, make sure that you do know what they mean. Look for examples. So semantics are about meaning. The meaning of content is currently written so that humans can understand it, not computers. Semantic enrichment adds a layer of metadata to your content that allows computers to understand it and then make connections to it. So what we're really looking for here is, what is this content about, but in a way that computers can process. So who are your most important readers? Obviously, the readers that we care the most about in publishing are people, but we have to recognize that people rely on computers to help them find information. So your information to be found by people has to be understood by computers. Semantics are about atomizing information, breaking it down into component parts and bits of knowledge so it can be recombined in meaningful and unique ways. I mean, we've heard all today about reuse, repurpose, recycle information. Semantics are a way to get at this. Semantic markup will allow you to take one, say, publication like a practice guideline or book chapter, and break it down into those component parts. So what we're talking about here is a content architecture that's going to take into account not only your different content types, like journals and books and ancillary content, but also the components of those. So the abstracts, the tables, the figures, the sections, and then all of the other kind of information that's attached to those, like videos and podcasts. And adding a topical layer that spans and connects everything. So this is the semantic layer. This semantic layer can be deployed first for your organization, so all the different content types that you have, then perhaps across your domain, and then sort of the true vision of a semantic web across all of the web so that all of the information is connected together. And then the point here is that you'll be able to retrieve very precisely from anywhere in your content very specific information, not only in one place, but everywhere that occurs. So where does the topical organizing scheme come from? That is taxonomy. There are many important benefits of taxonomy. These are the ones I'm going to focus on today. Normalization, consistency in tagging, content grouping and hierarchical relationships, and integrations. Equivalent relationships are critical, and by equivalence, I mean all of the things that essentially are used to refer to the same thing. So we're talking about synonyms, abbreviations, jargon, even misspellings can be very helpful to store as equivalents. Equivalents are necessary to normalize the language. Authors use particular language to describe concepts. Searchers come to your websites trying to using different terminology to find those concepts. So your taxonomy and your equivalents are going to help you add that normalizing layer. Equivalents are also very useful and critical, really, for performance of auto-tagging systems. Auto-tagging systems done automatically by computers love patterns. They love strings that they can match on. So the more strings you have that relate back to a preferred concept, the better you're going to be able to auto-tag your content. So what do I mean by normalization? Authors who write use different terminology to what's basically the same thing. We have synonyms like newborn, neonate. We have abbreviations. In STM publishing, I think you know the problem with abbreviations. There are an enormous number of abbreviations in our content, and then shorthand. A few characters to describe some very complex organisms. So searches for these language variations produce different results. The semantic layer and the equivalents are going to help you normalize this. So I want to show you an example of equivalence in action. This is McGraw-Hill's Access Emergency Medicine. I hope you can see that it's big enough. So this is a site obviously for emergency medical doctors. You will never find the term FB knows in a textbook for emergency medicine. Emergency medical doctors especially are very creative in their use of shorthand, jargon to find things, and so we found them coming to the site typing in things like FB nose, FB foot, FB hand, FB other things that you don't really even want to think much about, and realize that what they're talking about is foreign bodies. So the taxonomy, the thesaurus actually that's behind this site, is full of things related to foreign bodies. So by doing that, we're able to then match these very specific queries from emergency room doctors back to the preferred content and give them exactly the content that they're looking for, which is how to get a battery out of a kid's nose, which happens a lot. Taxonomy is going to give you consistency in tagging. So no matter if your tagging is done by humans or by control it. So when a computer or human comes along and they need to add a concept related to, for example, here, a catheter, you want to make sure that they're picking the right concept for catheter, the most precise and the correct concept, so consistency and tagging. The taxonomy is a hierarchical animal. It defines not only the terms, but also the relationships between them in terms of their parent and child relationships, so the hierarchy. So a taxonomy is going to be very helpful in grouping things topically. So as in this example, cytomegalovirus, where we're grouping together journal articles, book chapters, images, videos, even events that are happening on this specific topic. And we can also give end users the ability to traverse this hierarchy so that they can explore this topic in more detail. They can go broader, they can go narrower. Taxonomy is also critical, shared taxonomy is critical for integrations and interoperability. It gives hooks into data. So what we're looking at right here is the National Guideline Clearinghouse. This is a wonderful resource from ARC. I think for those of you in the audience who are medical publishers, you probably deposit your guidelines at the National Guideline Clearinghouse, and what they do there is write summaries. They do many different things, but one of the important things they do is to write summaries of practice guidelines. And they tag those summaries with different terminologies, controlled vocabularies that are used in healthcare. You might be familiar with some of these ICD-9, which is a way to describe diseases, MESH, which is typically used to classify literature, SNOMED, which is something that's used very commonly in electronic health records and has been accepted sort of as the standard for healthcare interoperability. And so they tag all of the guidelines with these controlled vocabularies so that then you can hook guideline summaries into external resources. So your own website, you could hook to these. They can hook them into electronic health records. Very valuable service they're providing here. So where does the taxonomy come from? Your content collection is the first question to look for. It comes from inputs from your users, author keywords, search logs. Subject matter experts can be very helpful in helping you describe your taxonomy. You won't want to hire them probably to build your taxonomy for you because they're very busy and perhaps expensive. There are a lot of companies that do help people build taxonomies, and I would highly recommend getting involved with one of them. And then, very importantly, industry standard terminologies. These can be sources for concepts, equivalents, and guidance on your hierarchy. I want to say a bit more about the importance of industry standards. So, your taxonomy is going to need to be able to interact with the standards of your domain to forge external integrations. And if you haven't yet started thinking about connecting your content to other content in your domain that you don't publish, I think it's inevitable that you're going to get there. Users want all of the content they're interested in one place, or at least they want to be able to find it from one place. So you really need to be thinking about connecting to some sort of taxonomic organizing structure that's going to let you connect across your domain, not just within your own organization. There are lots of different taxonomies, terminologies in play in the scientific domains, UMLS from National Institute of Health, American Chemical, Association for Computing Machinery, American Institute of Physics. There are really a lot of them. Investigate what's available and use them as a starting point. Don't reinvent the wheel. If there's a taxonomy that's a good fit, do use it. But you should recognize that even if there is a terrific taxonomy that seems to fit your domain well, you're still going to probably want a mechanism for adapting it to meet the needs of your content, your users and your user stories, and then the pace of change in your field. If you publish in cutting-edge areas, even taxonomies like UMLS that's available from NIH are too slow for you. I mean, you want to be able to add new concepts into your taxonomy as the literature is published. So you're the front line of this. You're the people publishing cutting-edge research. You're the people who are defining the language of the domain and the new concepts. You want to make sure that you have a way to adapt your taxonomy on maybe even a daily basis. basis. So you're going to have to depart from standards at some point, but you want to stay connected to them. Ongoing taxonomy management. Taxonomy should always be considered a work in progress. It'll never be done if you do it right. The taxonomy that we use at Silverchair, we update every working day, several times a day, as we find new concepts in the literature. And it's going to be really important to give yourself easy ways to update your taxonomy. If the update process for your taxonomy involves going to find a developer to change a database table, that's just not going to work. You want to find a tool that lets you do it in real time if possible. And then you're going to want to make the taxonomy available to your systems, your tagging systems, your web applications, again, ideally in real time. So application of taxonomy to content is what we call at Silverchair semantic tagging. Semantic enrichment is going to mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. Again, when you're talking to vendors in this space, you just want to make sure you understand what it is that they do. I'm going to run you through what I know most about, which is what we do at Silverchair. And at Silverchair, we like to tag XML. We love to tag XML. XML gives us a wonderful structure that lets us make decisions about what elements of your content are most important. And it also gives us hooks so that we can attach semantic concepts at the level of the element. Tagging can be put right in XML files. It can be put in databases that reference a file. It can be put in RDF files. These are technical things that I don't really have time to get into today, but we can talk more later if you want to. If you have content that's not XML based or that is inaccessible, you can put like images, videos, PDFs. You can put tagging kind of around them in headers. So, where do tags come from? Who tags? What tags? There are three sort of basic ways that it gets done. There's automation. Automation is highly scalable, tends to be a little bit more affordable. The accuracy can be questionable. If it's partnered with a very good taxonomy and equivalence, automation can be great. There's manual tagging. This is when humans with appropriate expertise, you'll sometimes hear them called SMEs, read content and apply tags. Humans do a very good job of tagging when clinical judgment is required, when they need to make a decision that's hard for computers to make. You can imagine the scalability problem, so if you're talking about tagging, say, the entire 200 years of your journal, it can be expensive and it would take a very long time to do this with humans. And then there are hybrid models where you start with automation and you follow that with modification review by humans. If I had been talking to you, say, 4 or 5 years ago, I would probably be arguing that the only way to do this is human tagging. That we've been tagging at Silverchair for about 10 years, and for many of those years we did use a purely human-driven method. But we have seen enormous strides in automation in the past few years. There's a lot of research being done in this area. Taxonomies are getting better and better, and so we've kind of come to the point now where much of our tagging is done by automation because it's kind of risen to the level where we think it is accurate enough for certain types of use cases. And there definitely are some times when we still go back to using humans because there are just certain types of tagging that computers have a tough time doing. So this is what a tag document might look like in our system. We try to, through one pass, tag for different use cases. So we tag down at the entity level. So entities are the sort of define what is this thing, and that's sort of shown by the red angle bracket tags here. This is very helpful when you're trying to find specific mentions of things like drugs, genes, clinical trials, manufacturers. But then we think it's very important also to be able to summarize tagging at all of the individual sections of your document. So the green summary tagging here, we will put tagging in at each subsection. We'll put summary tagging in at the level of figures and tables so that you can pull them out separately. And overall summaries of an entire work. Summaries answer the question of what is this section or article or chapter actually about. And then the kind of top level tagging you want to pay attention to would be collection tagging. So what major bucket does this content object belong in? And this is very helpful for driving features like topic collections or creating microsites on a specific topic or virtual journals. So why should you care? What are the benefits of tagging? So first, I think, is that what we're doing now really isn't working very well for our users. They are overwhelmed and frustrated by the amount of information that is coming at them. They want only relevant information, they want personalization, they want everything they're interested in one place, and they want tools to help them do their jobs better. As publishers, we have traditionally had a role in helping users find the best content through our systems like peer review and then getting it distributed to them. I think our opportunity to do this has never been greater, but the tools are changing. So, search is something we often hear when we start to talk to people about why they might be interested in semantic enrichment, semantic tagging, and search often comes up at the top of the list. Better search makes users more productive, which makes your application more useful to them. Tagging also allows people to find hard-to-find media, like images and videos, and these are not text-based, so when people run full-text searches at your websites, it's very hard to find images and videos and things like that because it's not able to sort of crawl the text except for maybe a legend of what that figure is actually about. And I think most people probably know that many figures come with legends that say things like Part B or another example. So this is a great way to find and expose images. So here's another example of normalization in search to improve search. This is from Access Medicine. Again, doctors very commonly think in abbreviations. They expect you to understand what they mean by PCP. Access Medicine is a site that has general medical content, so PCP can be many things: pentachlorophenol, phencyclidine, cystic cardiac pneumonia. So one of the things that you can do is provide sort of a disambiguation selection. So instead of mixing these things all up into one search result, you can pose to the user, which one of these things did you mean, and give them a much better search result. You can also use tagging and your taxonomy to allow filtering of searches. So this is Walters Kluwer Health's 5-minute consult. This is a classic book in medicine that's used very often in primary care settings. And so this application offers users the ability to restrict their search to diseases, treatment, lab tests. Again, the whole point here is to make this application, make your user more productive, make the application more useful to your user. So tagging is a great way to offer users pathways for serendipitous discovery. So this is like stumbling on those gems that they didn't even know existed. Let me give you an example here. This is the American Psychiatric Association Psychiatry Online site. They publish the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which is one of the most popular books in medicine, probably sells more than most other things in medicine. And what they've done here is taken a particular diagnostic criteria, in this case on anorexia nervosa. This is how we diagnose anorexia nervosa. And connected it to all of the other things that are available on this site related to this specific disorder, but not necessarily diagnosis of it. Some of them are differential diagnosis. There are cases to help kind of explain and bring this to life, and treatment guidelines. So most users are coming to your site, landing on your site at these kinds of content pages. They're coming from search engines, they're landing on content pages, and if you can show them other things from within the context of this page that are very relevant to what they are interested in, maybe you can entice them to stay longer. Maybe you can entice them to click some related content links and increase their usage and reliability on your site. So I talked earlier about contextual integrations. I'm not going to belabor that now. Just to remind you that we have both internal integrations where you are integrating across your many different content types: journals, books, videos, images, e-learning, but also externally. For example, the National Guideline Clearinghouse site I showed you, where you could integrate with electronic health records. Maybe you have content types that might be appropriate for display within the electronic health records you could integrate with. I think it's worth making the point that our users are increasingly expecting us to bring them content in their workflow. They want things that help them. They don't have time to jump out into our sites to learn to read a journal article. They want this brought to them in the tools that they use and in the work that they do every day. So keep this in mind when you think about integrations. Very helpful for new products. Content recycling, creating new products from content you already have. Tagging is going to let you first off find that content, know what it is that you have so that you don't just create it again. You can actually find the content, then you can recombine it in new ways. Things like virtual journals, knowledge environments. One of my favorite examples of virtual journals is American Institute of Physics citation platform. They have journals that are not available in print, but that are available virtually, and they collect articles from across not only AIP journals, but also some of their partners who publish on the citation platform. I really think they have the right idea here. What users want, this is the nanoscale science virtual journal. It functions very much like a real journal. It has a table of contents, it has RSS feeds. But I think AIP has the right idea in understanding that users don't want to just look at one journal to find information about nanoscale science. They want to find it, ideally they want to find everything in one place, but this is really, I think, a step in the right direction. I don't think you can currently subscribe to one of these journals, but I suspect that that's really just an issue of figuring out what the business model is that makes everyone comfortable. But this is a terrific use of semantic tagging. Search engine optimization is also an important feature. You can improve your ranking in major search engines. The next wave of search assistants that are coming, virtual research assistants, are going to give greater weight to the content they can understand. You can also use tagging to create auto extracts for content that doesn't have book chapters that don't have abstracts. So this is an example from the American Pharmacists Association Pharmacy Library. And you can see that what's exposed here is a little snippet of the text, but also the topics that are discussed in the chapter. So topics are useful here to encourage a user to maybe pay-per-view or subscribe to the site, or maybe pull out a credit card and do pay-per-view. But we also expose these topics to search engines, and I think on one site where we did this, the Google referrals increased something like 400% in the first quarter that the semantic tags were exposed. Very important too is semantic users. So as users search and navigate through content that's tagged topically, they can inherit those tags. So you can create a profile for them that starts to understand, based on the topics that they look at, what they're really interested in. You know what they're interested in over time, and you also know how their topics might be evolving. And you can use this information to start to create personalized information services for them. You can deliver them targeted alerts for marketing. You can deliver them maybe even customized home pages that give them, that notify them about new content that's been added to your collection since the last time they visited your site. This is really a terrific method for encouraging anonymous users to register for your site. This is, I think a lot of STM content is sold at the institutional level. There's a real problem with not knowing who those users are, and these kinds of really relevant and personalized services are great ways to get users to log in. You can also start to create things like communities of practice around users who have similar interests or the same interest. Advertising is a big one. Obviously, you can match article and ad based on semantic tagging. Especially in the healthcare literature, there are editorial policies that restrict showing targeted ads, and oftentimes because of this, scientific or medical journals don't allow medical advertising to be on don't allow pharmaceutical advertising to be on their article pages. But article pages are the most valuable. They're the ones that get the most views, and they're the ones that the advertisers are the most interested in. So you can use your semantics. First, you could block ads instead of targeting ads. You could make sure that those connected ads never appear. But perhaps a better way to do this, and actually I would posit that it's a better way for your users in general, would be to start to target those ads not to the content, but to the user. Again, remember that we know what these users are interested in because they have, because we have this profile that we've created based on their interests, so we can start to show them those ads on neutral pages that maybe don't have so much editorial concern related to them. Mobile, you can't really avoid talking about mobile these days. Definitely semantic tagging has great applicability in the mobile environment. In mobile, we absolutely want to reduce the number of clicks before we get to what we want. We can give people targeted navigation that leads them to the questions they're trying to answer. So I'm sort of stepping through here a dermatology app that because of the tagging, we can give people very specifically, let them step through very specifically and get to treatment advice or visual diagnosis. So how do you get started? First, you're going to ask a lot of questions. This is just a few of the questions. You're going to have questions for yourselves, and you're going to have questions for the people who host your content, whether it's internally on your .org CMS or with your content hosting partners for journals or books. What are your user stories? What are the business benefits in the ROI? If you don't know the answer to the second question here or start having a good grasp of it, it's going to be very hard to get somebody to write a check for this. This is not free technology. What content do you need to tag? How is that content delivered? And can those delivery systems use taxonomy and tagging in a way that supports your user needs? What's your plan for keeping your taxonomy up to date? Can your living taxonomy be integrated into your applications? Can that be done in real time? Also, it's always use cases. Always go back to your user stories. This is the most important thing that you can define when you're investigating these technologies. So the questions you're going to ask of semantic technology providers. Again, does technology support your user stories? Does the technology offer or integrate with a constantly evolving taxonomy? Does it meet the accuracy threshold for your users and your content? Accuracy threshold is a very important concept to think about when you're evaluating various semantic enrichment schemes. Think about, in healthcare, the accuracy threshold is very high. We need to make sure that our tagging is as accurate as possible. So think about what happens if you return a bad result. What are the outcomes if you return a bad result? What are your users going to do if you return a silly result to them? Will they abandon your site? So think very hard about what accuracy is required, and then make sure that the technology that you are ultimately select supports it. Can it tag at the depth, both granular down at that entity level and summary at that very top topic collection level that your content requires? Can it identify figures and tables and tag them so that you can pull them out individually? It's just a few of the questions you're going to want to ask. Again, it always comes back to user stories. So to close, I want to just sort of walk through what can be a very useful exercise to run through when you're trying to define these user stories. We sort of refer to these as semantic mad libs. I am specifically identifying blank because blank is very important to my blank users when they are blanking. So I have a couple of examples here. I am specifically identifying concise disease content because immediate access to treatment options is very important to my emergency physician users when they see 20 patients an hour. So here's an example of this use case, SALT. This again is Access Emergency Medicine, where emergency doctors search for AAA, which match to abdominal aortic aneurysm, and right here on this first page they get the treatment advice that they need and some pictures to back that up as well. So another one. I am specifically identifying skin disordered images on all body locations and all types of skin because visual diagnosis is very important to my family physician users. Derm 101 is a dermatology site that relies on the visual diagnostics. So when someone types in this case vitiligo, into the search engine here, the first thing that pops back is clinical atlas images because that's very important to these doctors when diagnosing skin disorders. So what are your user stories? Think about the problems that your users have and the needs that they have. Think about the problems that you have as an organization as you're thinking about these user stories. And focus on pain points. Focus on solving problems that your users have. If you can solve a pain point or meet a need, you are much more likely to get paid, frankly. That's it. Questions?
We have time for about 2 questions. Ready?
Yeah.
Thanks. Sorry for bringing up a research question.
Oh no.
Do you already see an added value use case for going beyond taxonomies?
You mean ontologies and
Whatever
things
it would be
beyond that?
beyond taxonomy.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just to sort of explain, a taxonomy has essentially relationships like parent-child, and then there are thesauruses which have other types of relationships like related to or equivalencies. And ontology is where you start to be able to find relationships. You can custom define your relationships, and it provides you a structure to let those relationships be understood again by computers. And we're talking about putting things like, we think about this a lot because we work in healthcare. The ability to relate, to find all of the treatments for a particular disease, or the ability to relate diseases and treatments in an ontology is incredibly valuable. Imagine if you could do that. I mean, this is not a trivial task. First, you have to find these relationships. There are probably some automated ways that we can pull out what we guess is these kinds of relationships. But then, especially in healthcare, you have to validate that these are actually true. This drug treats that disease. We need to know for a fact that that is true. But absolutely, it's the kind of the gold standard. It's what we would really